Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. My guest today is Sherra Aguirre, and it is the 1 year and 1 day anniversary of her book. I'm going to ask her to hold it up and show you this wonderful book that she wrote.
Here it is, Joyful, Delicious Vegan, Life Without Heart Disease.
I love the title. Thank you so much for being here. And I just think, joyful is great, but being without heart disease, I think even better.
Right. That's a good reason to be joyful.
Absolutely. So I listened to a few of the podcasts you did, so I know your story. I would definitely, you were on Rip's Plant Strong podcast, fabulous interview. But I think there's probably some viewers who are unfamiliar with your story and your journey. So on this 1 year and 1 day anniversary of your book, please tell us how you acquired heart disease and what you did to get rid of it.
Well, thank you so much, Chef AJ. And I'm just so happy to be here with you and your viewers today. I admire you and your journey as well.
Thank you.
Mine was really born of kind of experience from childhood, watching my family on both sides deal with various symptoms of heart disease, some catastrophic, some just chronic. My parents were on blood pressure medications for as long as I could remember. And there were heart attacks, aneurysms, people were getting stents, and they were on blood thinners, and all of the side effects from all of that. It's kind of what I grew up with. And when I started seeing some of the same things happening to my generation and actually cousins younger than myself, that really got my attention. So when I was turning 30, which was a big deal for me back then, 30 used to sound ancient. And so I started to notice my body was changing a little bit in terms of mainly how I felt after eating my typical fast food lunch. I'd grab a burger and fries. I'd get, some fried chicken. I'm in Texas. Fried chicken was a big thing still. And basically my energy level would just fall through the floor. And I would drag myself through the afternoon. And I started paying attention to what I ate and then how I felt afterwards. And slowly I just started basically gravitating toward a more vegetarian diet. I just eliminated things, one at a time, kind of. The first to go was fried foods. I knew fried foods were bad for me. And so I did that. The fried chicken went, the Krispy Kreme donuts. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't tell the brand, but the donuts went. And I just started reading, and whatever I could find about health and wellness and diet, I just wanted to learn more. And so over the next 20 years, I continued to eat that way, not strictly vegetarian because I still ate fish and I still ate dairy. But in my 50s, my blood pressure started to creep up anyway. And so I was thinking, like, what's up with this? What's wrong with this picture? Because I'm doing, better than most people I know, and I'm active. And I really never had a weight problem. So I thought, well, that's not it. Why is this happening? But it did. And I ended up having to go on blood pressure medications, which I did. But I really felt like, there's got to be something else that I can do. What really convinced me is that I had a couple of experiences. The first was pretty mild. I was out in the yard, doing something in the flower bed, got up too quickly and felt lightheaded. And the one that really was the, I guess, eureka moment for me when I knew I had to do something better and different was that I was on the freeway driving, and all of a sudden I felt like I was going to pass out. I started to just kind of go blank, and I had a friend with me, in fact, an elderly friend. And so that just scared me so much. I was able to make it off the freeway, make it over to the feeder, get to the surface road. We were on our way to lunch, and as soon as I hit the surface road, the feeling just vanished. I mean, it just kind of went away. So we had lunch, but I said after that, no, I've got to find a way, because I had not experienced anything like that prior to getting on the medications. So I was very fortunate to be referred to a cardiologist who was also vegan. Some of the viewers may know the name Dr. Baxter Montgomery.
Love Dr. Montgomery's been on the show many
Dr.
times. That was such a stroke of luck for you.
It was really a stroke of luck, and it was kind of part of the journey because I was seeing a naturopath. And so that was the recommendation from the naturopath. So basically, when he told me, hey, you can stay on medications or we can, further improve your diet. And he says, the fish needs to go. And I looked at him like, what? Give up fish, And he just laughed because I didn't even have to say it. He saw it on my face. And he said, well, you think about it. So I did, but, I had been reading about a vegan lifestyle, a whole food, plant-based diet. And I said, and this was like 20 years ago. And I said, I've got to do this. I've got to try this. And I did. And it wasn't quick or easy. I learned lots along the way, and I'm still learning. But here I am at 73, no symptoms, no medications.
73 looks amazing on you.
Oh, you're kind.
Wow. That is fantastic. I love that story. So what propelled you to write the book, which was released 1 year and 1 day ago?
Well, you know what? I actually started on the book many years ago, but I had a business. I was in business. I actually started a small business and ran it for 35 years. And I sold it 6 years ago to focus on the book because I could never stay focused on it. But, everything works out, I think, in the right timing because I was still learning and the landscape about food and health was rapidly changing. The science was becoming more convincing that whole food plant-based eating had so many health benefits, including the ability to reverse, things like heart disease. And so I started reading more from Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, who I greatly admire. And I pretty much followed what Baxter started me on, and I added things that I learned from, reading things from Dr. Esselstyn, certainly his signature book, How to Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. And over time, I was able to, reduce my blood pressure symptoms, but I was inconsistent. It took a while for me to really understand that, okay, I'm eating all plant-based at this point, but I was eating too much fat. So I was eating too many nuts, too many avocados. So too much of a good thing is too much of a good thing. So I had to find out what really worked for me.
That's amazing. That's amazing. People love to know what everyone that is successful eats. Would you mind sharing maybe what a day's worth of food looks like? And are there any recipes in your book?
Yes, sure. For me, I really enjoy starting my day with fruits. They're hydrating, they're nutritious. And so I have a fruit plate, and on a lot of my social media, I do a Friday fruit face because I like, creating funny faces with the fruit. Just something to make it more joyful. It gets back to the title of the book, Joyful, Delicious Vegan. And that joy is something that was really a part of why I wanted to write the book. I wanted to flip the narrative about, or the popular perception that going plant-based means denial. It means giving up things that you like. It means, just the opposite of what I was feeling and experiencing. And so I eat fruit, I make it pretty, I mix things that are seasonal. So I'll have fruit, I'll accompany that with typically a bowl of cereal. And typically it's oatmeal. And some of the fruit I just throw in there as well, along with some raisins. I make some granola, which is really easy to make. It's not a recipe in the book, but I love that. I'll have that with plant-based milk. And the other thing I do for heart health and omega-3s, I always have a little side of ground flaxseed and some raw pumpkin seeds. And it kind of balances the sweetness of the fruit. And so the whole meal is just really enjoyable. And that's my breakfast.
That, I know if you work with Dr. Montgomery, I know he's a big fan, at least in the healing phase, of the raw food diet. Did you do that for a while you were working with him?
I did. I actually did that for almost a year and a half because I found out I liked it. But it was really nice, though, as I healed, I was able to add that cooked food. So the recipes in my book are mostly cooked foods, but they're all whole food plant-based. So oil-free is important to me, and particularly with when we understand what oil does. I think one of the eureka moments for me around oil is that there really is no such thing as a healthy oil. There are less unhealthy oils, and certainly olive oil being one of those. But anytime we, eat oil, it injures the epithelial lining of our arteries, and then the body tries to repair that, and you get this kind of scaling or little scabs on the inside, and eventually the passageways get so narrow that the heart has to pump harder, to get the blood flow through. And so when I began to visualize that, that helped me understand how important it is to, again, be careful with what I eat. And if I'm going to eat fat, we all need fat, eat the whole food, not the extracted oil.
Yeah. All right. So we've got your breakfast. Let's move on to lunch.
On lunch. So here's something that I don't recommend necessarily to people. I know other people that do it. I only eat 2 meals a day. And part of that, and maybe we'll talk about that a little later, but part of that is my mornings are my mindfulness period. So in the morning, that's the time that I do my meditation, I do yoga. And typically I like to sleep a little late. So I don't get up really early in the morning to do those things unless I have a commitment. So basically, once I do all of that, I have my meal after. So I'll eat a meal about a late morning. It's kind of a brunch, with the fruit plate. And then my second meal will be in the evening around 6 or 7. So, I'm not trying to do intermittent fasting. That's not the reason. It just works for me. I feel good doing that. I'm not hungry when I wake up. And I eat really good full meals. I kind of eat a lot when I do, and I enjoy it. So the second meal will be my savory meal. So the morning is, fruit. It's more on the sweet side. It's hydrating. And I really, get into the savory stuff. So I eat a lot of rice and beans. I'm in Texas. So black-eyed peas, collard greens, cornbread. I have a really good cornbread recipe in my book that it took me, Chef AJ, because I'm not a chef. I didn't even like cooking before I started eating plant-based because I could just go out and get something anywhere, and but it took me 3 years to get this cornbread recipe the way I wanted it. And so I'm so proud of that. And I actually worked with a local chef to help me with my cooking skills. Because I ran a business. I never really did a lot of cooking, So, but anyway, so I eat a lot of vegetables like collard greens, turnip greens, black-eyed peas, stews, soups. In my book, I talk a lot about international foods and how easy they are to adapt because I've traveled a bit and I've always been kind of an experimental eater as well. And my husband is from Senegal, West Africa. So there's some African dishes in the book. I talk about Indian foods. There's a oil-free Indian curry recipe in my book. So any of those things that revolve around legumes, things like whole grains, those are the things I gravitate toward in the evening. And I always have a huge salad out of whatever I've got in the fridge.
That's great. Once you committed to this, did you kind of go cold tofurkey?
No, I was a plotter. Some people are jumpers. Once they make up their mind to do something, they can just jump right in. That's not me. My journey, again, started when I was 30. So that's how slow I've been. But with the decision to go vegan with Dr. Montgomery, I still phase things in the sense that I had to learn more about, not doing too much fats. And he had warned about that. And Dr. Esselstyn warns about that because he was recently asked, I think at the Plant Strong Festival they did recently, the one that they do in the summer, he was asked by Rip, do you recommend nuts for your patients? I think someone sent the question in. He says, well, no. And he says, because he says, not that nuts aren't good for us, but he said with people who are trying to reverse or prevent heart disease, they're so addictive that it's hard. He said, if I told people that they could eat nuts, they'd be in the glove compartment of the car, they'd be at the office, they'd be, in the living room, they'd be everywhere. People would just, because they're good, they taste good and they're satisfying. So I had to learn that the hard way because I was one of those people that had them everywhere.
That's funny. Did you ever have any weight problems?
I didn't. I really didn't. And I so respect what it takes because I have many friends, family members who have struggled with weight issues. And I have some people who are larger but they're healthy, and I learned that weight is important, but what's inside, is more important. And so, no, I never did have that issue. And that just shows that all of us are different, and I know a lot of people who are thin and not healthy.
Yeah. Do you still see Dr. Montgomery as your cardiologist?
Well, I don't have a cardiologist anymore.
Because you don't have heart disease anymore. But I thought
he did give me a wonderful blurb for my book, as did Ann and Essie, Dr. Esselstyn and Ann. So I really appreciate that. They were very kind.
That is fantastic. What about exercise? Did that play a role at all? Does it play a role in your daily life?
Well, it absolutely does. So that mindfulness kind of a slow morning that I have, part of that's yoga. And so I started practicing yoga. A friend introduced me to yoga 25 years ago. So for the last 25 years, that's part of my morning routine. And that and my meditation are really foundational. The other thing I do is that I have I'm not sure if you're familiar with scoliosis, but it's a curved spine. And so what I do is I also do exercises that I've learned whenever I have to go for physical therapy or something like that. I've just worked that into my morning routine. So a lot of stretching. I try to get my heart rate up to, so that's my morning exercise. And then in the evenings, I try to do a little cardio. I have in my garage, I don't go to the gym since COVID, but I have a elliptical machine in the garage. And quite honestly, I don't get out there nearly as much as I need to, but I try to get out there at least 3 times a week.
That's fantastic. Did you any particular type of yoga?
You know what? Not really. And honestly, it's more of a hatha yoga, but I've incorporated things over the years. And quite frankly, I've made up some things to fit my body. So I'm kind of a freewheeler when it comes to that. I have gone to classes and I enjoy classes, but I really enjoy doing it at home. It's to me, it's kind of an extension of the body-mind connection and the awareness. So I kind of enjoy just kind of doing it in the quiet of on my little mat on my floor.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I like to do it myself too. I have a little closet that I call my yoga room. I saw a question here for you. Oh yeah. So TS asks, when you first saw the doctor, did he stop or did you stop your medication cold turkey? Or did they take it away slowly as your numbers began to improve?
Well, good question. And no, it wasn't cold turkey. In fact, I had to make the decision that I was going to give up the fish and the dairy. So I continued to take the medication. And once I started the detox and the whole food plant-based and actually raw whole food plant-based diet, he decided that I could go off of it, but only because he was monitoring me.
Nice. And Anjali wants to know, in addition to being oil-free, are your recipes also free of sugar and salt?
You know what? I typically will use, the short answer is no for salt. They're not all salt free, but I typically use liquid aminos. Now there's still sodium there, but the recipes are such that I put the minimum in there. And if people want to increase it or decrease it or leave it out altogether, the recipes will still be good because what I like to do is layer flavors with spices and herbs. And so there is some salt in some of them, but mostly liquid aminos. And there is absolutely no refined sugar.
That's fantastic. Were you able to inspire any friends or family with your journey?
Yes, not as many as I would like. The one thing that I think that's really important, and I know you know this, Chef AJ, you have to meet people where they are, and people don't make changes until they're ready. So for me, it's been mostly living it, and sharing it with people, even with my business before. For the last 20 years of my business, the employees knew whenever we had like a function, if there was like a brunch or if there were snacks, they would always make sure there was fruit, there was some, veggies or something there. Even with business dinners, I have a part of a chapter in my book where I talk about vegan in a steakhouse because I had to take clients to lunch a lot of times or to dinner. And when you do that, you don't base it on what your tastes are, you base it on what that client, is comfortable with. So I would do that. And oftentimes it would take me to places, I'm in Texas, that would be like a steakhouse. And so in that chapter, what I talk about is how do you kind of game the menu, to eat well. And so I would basically always start with scanning the menu for plant, options, seeing what they had. And it would typically end up being some kind of salad, but then I would put different ingredients in it. And once in this Texas steakhouse, I got the salad, and instead of iceberg lettuce, I would get spinach or whatever else they had that had a little more color and a little more nutrient dense. Avocados, again, there's a lot of Mexican flavored foods here and items. I got some salsa. And actually, I did put some nuts on that one, some red onions. And then with sometimes I would get like a lemon or just ask for balsamic vinegar. And when my food would come out, a lot of times my clients would say, "Oh, wow, that looks pretty good." And I'd say, "Yes, maybe you want to try it next time." So that was kind of how I approached that, just trying to make sure that I was not judgmental about people, that I was just living kind of what I needed to live for my own health, and then to share it in that way.
Your clients, do you work with people now in helping them improve their health?
Actually, Chef AJ, what I'm doing, and one of the reasons why I wrote the book was not just to write a book, but I wanted to help spread this message, particularly in minority communities. And that is because, as we all know, our health statistics are at the wrong end of pretty much any one of the chronic diseases. Black women, for example, well, first of all, heart disease is the number one killer, even in the COVID period. There have been more deaths from heart disease in the last 2 years than there have been from COVID. And we also know that heart issues and other chronic issues make us more susceptible to severe cases. So basically, what we do is and hold on, let me backtrack to what was the question again? Because I started thinking about the COVID.
The question, do you work with clients?
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what I was leading up to is that I wrote the book in order to be able to really impact the health outcomes, starting in my community, which is a minority urban community in Houston, Texas. And so at this point, what we're doing is we've started a health and wellness ambassador initiative. And this is at one of the community centers. And the way we're doing that is we're bringing people in for a 5-week, basically group of sessions around whole food, plant-based eating. We have a couple of board certified lifestyle docs who are part of the team putting this together. We have yoga teachers that are doing it. We have gardeners. In fact, we partnered with 2 urban gardens here in the community. And we're actually investing in them too to help increase their productivity, their visibility in the community. So basically, my goal with this book is to help spread the message of self-care. And it's so important, particularly with the health statistics that we have, particularly with African Americans, but pretty much our general population as well. But in our communities, it's really critical.
Absolutely. Is there any vegan community at all in Texas where you live? What part of Texas do you live in, by the way?
In Houston. And you'd be surprised, there are not as many options as there are in cities like New York, LA. I did a lot of travel in my business life. And I loved going to places where I could, try new restaurants, vegan restaurants, wonderful food. But yes, it is definitely here. And here's something that surprises people. BBC did a study in 2020, and the results were that in the US, Black Americans are 3 times more likely to identify as vegan or vegetarian than any other demographic. So it is alive and well, but it is not yet mainstream. And so the goal is to make sure that people who really need this message, people who are perhaps not able to go to Whole Foods. So that's why we're investing in local community gardens, because I live 5 minutes from a food desert, which means that people can't have easy access to fresh produce in the community. They've got to go outside the community, which means you need a car, which means you have to spend gas and time, and you may be working a couple of jobs. So these things are barriers that we're trying to address.
That's great. I have a question from a live viewer, and it was, okay, where did it go? It was about who you followed at first, like when you were making the dietary changes.
Well, certainly Baxter was one of the earliest ones as my cardiologist. Before, I certainly read Dean Ornish because of his work. He and Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, as many of us know, were the early pioneers in the space when it was not nearly as much as widely accepted as it is now to consider diet as basically the cure, for things like heart disease. So a lot of Dean Ornish, a lot of Caldwell Esselstyn, some of the others, Joel Furman, I've read, and there are so many now that so many new voices in this landscape. Reading things like the China study was very influential, to me. And that global perspective, I think, helps us understand why it's so important for us in the US to realize that our standard American diet has to change.
Absolutely. Donna says, do you know any whole food plant-based folks in San Antonio, Texas?
Well, I know some restaurants. I don't really know, I don't have friends there, but there are a couple of good restaurants that I've eaten at in San Antonio. I'm trying to remember. There's one in particular that I'm trying to remember. So what I'll do, Chef AJ, is that I'll go back and get those names. It's been a while since I've been to San Antonio, but there are some good plant-based options there. There are those in Austin. Here in Houston, one of my favorites is about 5 minutes from my house. It's called Green Seed Vegan. They actually do a lot of raw options, but and they were actually mentioned early on. They've been around about 10 years in a national survey of one of the best plant-based restaurants. And this was when they opened back 10 years ago, but they're still going strong. They just opened a new restaurant called Mantra that's more of a fine dining for vegans. My very favorite here in Houston is Sunshine's. It is a deli, a vegan deli, and it's actually, Chef AJ, been around for probably, I'm going to say almost 30 years.
Wow.
And yeah, and the food's great. There's a lot of comfort food, but it's done without things like sugar, refined sugar. They do use some oils, but really not many. And a lot of their food is oil free, but it's delicious. It's so good. And when you go, they just opened a second restaurant as well. There's a Mexican restaurant here in Houston called Vigos that's really, really good. So yes, there is really good food here in Texas. And one of the shocking things in a small town in East Texas, which is where I'm from, actually made the national news some years ago. The whole town, led by the mayor, who found out he had a prostate cancer issue. The whole town started, having potlucks, and they had these meetings, and they achieved a lot of good results. So they kind of put Marshall, Texas on the map, and that's right in the middle of cattle country.
Oh my God. I used to speak at their events. They used to do in-person events. The mayor at the time, Ed Smith, Andy Smith.
Okay, wonderful. See, I didn't even remember his name, but that's great.
That is fantastic. Yeah, they did some really fun events. You have a friend watching named Susan Marsh, says she loves seeing
Susan.
her friend on the show. And let's see, there's a question on we can't really answer medical questions because at least I know I'm not a doctor. I don't think Sherra is either, but it's somebody with diabetes. And they said Terry says, I'm recently diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I'm not sure what to eat yet. Your breakfast fruit and seeds sounds good, but I'm not sure yet about eating fruits with this condition. I would refer you to Mastering Diabetes. Are you familiar with them, Sherra?
You know what? I am not familiar with them, but I just did some research on fruit and diabetes in my blog. And actually, the new recommendations are that eating whole fruit is actually beneficial for diabetes. And again, if you're on medications, before you make any dietary change, you have to check with your doctor, make sure they know what you're doing, have a plan with them, because your medications, if you have them, will have to be monitored and, sometimes reduced. So that is a recommendation for everybody that I have, whether you have heart disease, anytime you're working with a physician, consult with them, let them know what you're doing so that they can support you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But fruit is good. Fruit is good. Yeah. It's better to eat the whole fruit. Drinking fruit juice, not so much because it's more concentrated. It's the fiber in the fruit that makes it healthy for diabetics, and tempers the sugar spike.
Eat the fruit, the whole fruit, and nothing but the whole fruit.
Thank you.
Well, doesn't Dr. Montgomery still have a restaurant or a cafe in his medical practice?
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. And he's had that for quite a while. And I had a lot of meals there, particularly when I was seeing him. And it's not just for his patients. A lot of people just go because food's good.
Yeah. I remember he did a conference a few years ago and I came, and it was wonderful. Really.
Right.
Wonderful.
I think it's called the Garden Kitchen.
Yeah, that's great. He's a funny guy, isn't he? He's just delightful. I love his laugh. I don't know if you saw my show when he was on. It was for Black History Month, and I was doing it with Dr. Columbus Batiste. And we were mentioning that this is just so funny. I'd like to tell you this, especially if you didn't hear it. So just the name Baxter, it's not a very common name, at least anymore. And the name Columbus, other than Christopher Columbus, I'd never heard anybody named Columbus. So I was remarking on how they both had, somewhat uncommon and unusual names. And Dr. Montgomery was telling the story that when his mother gave birth to him, she called him to say it was a boy. And the father said, name him Baxter. And the mother wanted to name him something else. And the father said, name him Baxter or don't bring him home.
Okay. Well, I do know that his mom's experiences with her health had a great influence on the course of his medical practice. He saw her struggle with chronic disease, and I know what that's like to see, family members, do that. So that was a big part of his wanting to do something more for his patients rather than just manage symptoms.
Any of your immediate family change their diet when they saw you get so healthy?
Yeah. Actually, one of my granddaughters is vegan. The other one is mostly vegetarian. My daughters, one of them is mostly vegan. The other one says, Mom, this is what she said 10 years ago. When I would talk to her about food and all, she says, Mom, you just make me want a double cheeseburger. and that was 10 years ago. I am happy to report that she is on the path. She is doing a lot of things. She's not yet whole food, plant-based vegan, but she's moved along the spectrum in the right direction toward more plant foods, less meat, less dairy.
That's great. Well,
and
that's
I have some other cousins. I have a cousin who's a physician that recently just got off all his medications.
So is he going to become like a lifestyle medicine doctor now?
No, he's actually a plastic surgeon. So a whole different.
Oh, okay.
But my whole family has issues with heart disease as far as our history goes. So we're all pretty conscious of that. And so he took the right steps and, he's getting good results.
Nice. Oh, Susanna was saying her son stopped eating fish after watching Seaspiracy. That movie was not in existence when you were wanting to know you have to give up fish.
To give up fish, and still the popular conception is that fish is healthy for you, and it's kind of like the oil. It may be less unhealthy, than red meat, but not healthy, and certainly not healthy for the planet.
Or the fish.
Yeah, definitely not healthy for them. I mentioned something about COVID. There was an interesting statistic I would like to share with people, and I'm reminded because you mentioned fish. Basically, there were several studies done, and they found out that they looked at two groups. They looked at one group that was whole food plant-based. They looked at another group that was mostly whole food plant-based, but still ate fish. And then they looked at a third group, which pretty much ate the standard American diet, heavy in meat, red meat. So the results in terms of COVID were that the whole food plant-based group that ate all fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, grains, a plant-based diet, had a 73% less likely outcome for severe COVID. The middle group that ate mostly plants but still ate fish had a 59% reduction in the occurrence of severe COVID reaction. And the third group that was mostly heavy meat, very few plants, had a 300% increased likelihood of severe COVID. So it all gets back to, I think, our immune system and how we feed ourselves has everything to do with kind of our health outcomes.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so there's a question here. Melissa says where to get the book. I've been posting a link on Amazon, but is it available anywhere else?
Yes, anywhere books are sold, you can get it. And Amazon's easy. I also like to ask people to support their local bookstores, indie bookstores, but it's available wherever books are sold.
Great. I've been posting that link and I put it in the chat in the show notes.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And let's see. Elodie says the cover of the book looks lovely and it entices me to buy the book. Did you come up with the title?
I did with help. I have to give my publisher a woman-owned publishing company in Berkeley, California called She Writes Press. Very good for women writers and new voices. And so they really helped me with that title because the first title actually was quite different. It was Roots, was the first title. And that was a kind of a nod back to my heritage, African heritage. But anyway, we ended up with Joyful Delicious Vegan after we went through several iterations of Roots with different combinations. But the joyful part, I insisted on leading with. And so that was something that I kind of stuck with, that joyful concept.
How long did it take you to write the book and did you enjoy the process?
It took a long time because I was not a writer. My daughters are writers. I know what it takes to write. I do not have what they have in terms of just focus and passion on the art and the craft of it. But I had very good help. I had a really awesome editor, Melody Guy in New York, did a great job. I had mentors along the way. Sharice Fisher is a book agent in New York that helped. Fauzia Burke helped with book marketing. So I just had these awesome people, but Lisa Fife in San Diego did the cover design. So Lisa Fife gets all the credit, for that.
Oh, that's great. I have a question here from Donna. Does your book walk you through lowering blood pressure?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. That is the focus really for me, was on hypertension. That was my biggest heart disease symptom. I had others. And yes, it does walk you through, and it kind of compares the Esselstyn program with the Ornish program, and they're very similar, and they're very similar to what I learned in going through Dr. Baxter Montgomery's program. But it definitely talks about a couple of things. I think one of the first one is eating mindfully. And that means that once we recognize that food is so critical to our health and to reversing heart disease or reversing hypertension, that mindfulness of making sure that we are thoughtful about what we eat, we do some meal prep, some meal planning, that we are always, I guess, focused on how we can eat better, and that we're not hard on ourselves. A part of the mindfulness is being kind to yourself, being compassionate with yourself, and understanding that it takes time to make the change. Do some small things, small steps forward, and everything counts. Everything that we do counts. So basically work with your health care provider. If you're on medications, that's always important. Just start eating more vegetables, start there. Maybe start having some meatless days per week, meatless Mondays, or, and then go to maybe twice a week. But just know that everything you do counts. Everything that you do will help. And in the long run, you will see the results.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Donna says, she loves your calm energy and you look fabulous. She's definitely getting your book.
Oh, that's kind. Thank you. That's
yeah.
So kind.
And Apple says, need to do a lot of chaturanga to get arms like Sherra's.
Oh my God. Now, you know what? I'm not sure where that comes from. I guess it's my modified push-ups that I do.
Yeah. What do you do for fun?
Oh, wow. You know what? I love cooking now. I never liked it, Chef AJ. I wasn't good at it. I just didn't like it. I was doing my business. I was traveling, for business, and it was work, and it felt like more work. But now, and it's taken a while to get me here, but I had to learn, because there's no way I could do this book without, practicing what I preach and learning how to do it. And the other thing is, there was no way I was going to settle for food that wasn't delicious. I never believed, I refused to accept that I couldn't find foods that were good for me that I would love. And so now that I'm on that path, I love being in the kitchen. And it's almost a different form of meditation for me. I really kind of like being by myself. I don't really want the TV on. I just really like to focus on what I'm doing. And so right now, that's a big passion, for me, is doing that. The other thing that I love doing is I love meeting people. I love the community outreach that I'm doing. It's so inspiring. I get inspired by people who are out there doing the best they can, to make their budget, friendly for eating the way that we know we need to eat to have good health. I listen to their stories. I love, sharing with them. I love hearing what they have to share. So the community outreach is fun. The cooking is fun. I love sports. I'm a sports fan. So I'm an NBA fan. I'm watching the playoffs. So those are some of the things I enjoy.
Do you use any of my favorite tools like the Instant Pot or the air fryer?
Air fryer, yes. Air fryer is wonderful. And actually, my husband bought the air fryer, and but no, it's really good for. Now he is not whole food plant based, but he has come a long way. So at this point, he is mostly whole food, mostly plant based. The thing he has not given up is the fish. He's from West Africa. He grew up eating fish. That's going to be tough. But the air fryer is so quick. He does his fish in the air fryer. I do veggies in the air fryer.
What are your favorites?
You know what? I love doing like potatoes, like, roasted potatoes, in the air fryer. They come out really crispy and nice. I do them in the oven too on a silicone mat. That works really good. But sometimes it's just a mixture of vegetables, maybe cauliflower, some asparagus if I have it, mushrooms, red onion. I just like putting whatever I have together and spice it up with lots of spices. I like spice, and put it right in that air fryer.
Yeah. Which air fryer do you have?
You know what? He bought some off brand. My husband is a bargain shopper. So he loves open box items. Oh, this is a great deal. But whatever he had, it works. It works just fine.
Yeah. No. Hey, you know what? That's all that matters.
Yeah, it works.
Um, do you have, did you realize you have a twin, Ms. Susan Taylor from Ebony Magazine?
I look here. I would love to be Susan Taylor's twin. I think she's gorgeous, and that is a high compliment. Thank you very much.
That's from E. That, yeah. I'm going to Google her to see if you really do look like her. They say that we all kind of have a twin,
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So what would you really like people to know so that they can get to the point you got to without having to, to take the medications that are going to give them side effects? And
well, here is, I want people to know that our bodies are amazing, that even, I guess, the medical profession is still learning how amazing they are. There's much more than that we don't know than there is that we do know. But our bodies are energy and information, and food that comes from the ground, whole food, is energy and information. And they work together beautifully when we put them together. And so I would just encourage people to be patient with themselves, start where you are, don't be judgmental about yourself. Just take small steps to include more whole foods, plant-based foods in your diet, more fruits, more vegetables, more whole grains. Carbs are good. The only bad carb is a carb that has had something taken away from it or something added to it. As
it's
in a
kind of
process.
like the same thing with fat. The only bad fat is because
Exactly.
That's the idea of processing. Yeah.
Exactly.
I just Googled Susan Taylor, and she is gorgeous, and I can see a resemblance, almost like sisters, maybe. Yeah. Nice.
You guys are being really, really generous.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How long have you been following this lifestyle now?
Well, the meditation and yoga started many, many years ago. The vegetarian part started many, many years ago, but the vegan part is about 13 years now.
Nice. And the book part about 1 year.
The book part about 1 year. Working on it for many years before, but actually getting it done and getting it published.
How many recipes are in your book, and do you think you might write another book?
You know what? I don't know. I'm having so much fun doing I guess, fulfilling the purpose for the book, which is getting out into our community and spreading the message and the tools and strengthening our food system, food security system in our low income neighborhood. And the point with that is to try to replicate what works. This is kind of a pilot that we're doing, and we want to see what works and then replicate it in other communities, starting here in Houston. So I don't know about writing another book, but the recipes, there are 25 recipes in my book. My book is a small book, 25 recipes. And I can tell you some of my favorites, and I'm always learning more all the time because now I'm enjoying it, right? But one of my favorites is I mentioned Clara's vegan cornbread. Clara's my granddaughter that's vegan, so it's her, and she loves cornbread. There's one that I call better than tuna salad. And that one uses chickpeas. It has fresh dill. It has corn. It has a cashew cream sauce that goes into it. It has capers, for the little pop of flavor. That stuff is so good. And I was a tuna lover, and this is better than tuna. That's why I call it the better than tuna salad, right? Because for the flavor, it's actually better. And so those are two of my favorites from the book. And then my other granddaughter, she actually helped me with my, I call it Zoella's Apple Crisp. And so it's a really simple little dessert. And so that's in the book as well. Simple, quick, but so good. And she taste tested it. She tried it. She said, thumbs up.
That's great. I love it. Susanna says, I plan on aging backwards like Sherra. She exudes joyfulness and is so youthful.
Oh, that is so kind. Yeah. And this is kind of the way I am every day. I mean, I have periods, the news now is such a downer, right? I mean, I'm in Texas, we all know, what's happening here, what just happened in the last few days. But the thing that keeps me motivated is I know we can all do better. And I think that it is so important to build resilience. I think with self-care, with mindfulness, we have to maintain a sense of possibility. I think that what is also important for people to know is that this lifestyle that we talk about, eating whole food, plant-based, is also really good for our environment. Some people don't realize that basically, according to the FAO, basically 18% of the methane gas emissions come from the food industry, and that's actually more than the transportation industry. And so it's really, really important to understand what particularly cattle, the large cattle feeding operations, they call them CAFOs, the damage that does with methane emissions for our environment, the damage that does with the runoff of the excess antibiotics they have to feed the cattle because they are confined, they're not kept in healthy conditions. So food touches on so many of our major issues. It also touches on the issue of compassion, and that's something that we need a lot more of. And someone once said that when the day comes that we no longer kill animals for food, it will be unthinkable to kill another human being. And that always stuck with me.
Wow, it's profound for sure. Thanks for being an ethical vegan also.
Well, it's all important. And I think the more it's kind of like the three legs of a stool. You've got the health component, you certainly have the environmental component, and then you have the compassion for animals component. And when we have those three, when we're aware, at least, or mindful that there's all of this good that's possible from what we're doing, it gives us more reason to sustain it. It gives me that joy to know that this is a way that I don't have to wait for a bill to pass. I don't have to wait for big ag to change its act. These are things we can do. We can vote with our dollars and our purchasing power.
Yep, absolutely. Here is a question from May. What's been the benefits of this diet when going through menopause? I'm headed on that journey soon.
Oh, wow. I hear you. Doctor, I don't know if, I know you are, Chef AJ, but I don't know how many of your listeners may be familiar with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM, and Dr. Neil Barnard, who heads up that organization. And I'm really thankful for him. I got a blurb. Actually, his blurb is on the front cover of my book. I've been a supporter of theirs for many years, but they have been doing lots of research. And one of the things that that they have done a lot of research recently on is menopause and food and a whole plant-based diet. And it is definitely helpful. By the time that I went whole food plant-based, I had already gone through it. So I did not have necessarily the benefit of that as I was going through it. But the new research is really, really interesting. And one of the things is that I learned, and it was actually Dr. Bernard that said, hey, because I had him kind of review the book, I wanted to get his take on it. And one of the things he pointed out was the new research on soy, because, soy got a bad rap because back in the 70s, when the American public was starting to look for meat alternatives, people were turning to soy. So then there was this kind of marketing blitz from the meat and dairy industry to say, oh, but it has estrogen, phytoestrogens, it raises cancer risk, it will make all kinds of hormone issues worse. And in fact, the more recent research shows the opposite is true. First of all, phytoestrogens do not act like human estrogen. And actually, the research shows that it can help those symptoms. It also can actually help reduce the likelihood of breast cancer recurrence in postmenopausal women. So what I would do is, and I don't have the name of the study, but I would encourage people to go to Physician Committee for Responsible Medicine, their website, and look for the recent studies on menopause and food.
Yep, that's great advice. Thank you. And here is a question from JD. I'm hooked on sugar. I eat mostly vegan, but love sweets. How can I stop? It's holding me back.
JD, I'm right there with you. I love it. Love sweets, love sweets, love sweets. However, what I've learned is that it's kind of like all sweets aren't created equal. So really for me, eating the whole fruit, for example, is a way to satisfy my sweet tooth, if you will. So I eat a lot of fruit. I mean, that's the first thing that I do. And the second thing that I do, I'll give you an example. One of the other recipes, and this recipe was not in my book, but it's one of my favorite now, chocolate chip zucchini muffins.
That's so funny. That was just made on the show by Plant Fit Meg 2 days ago. What are the chances?
Oh, wow. They are so good. And I like to experiment with flours, and I like buckwheat. So I played around with the recipes that I found, and hers might even been one of them. And I'm not sure what she uses, but I use buckwheat flour, a combination of buckwheat, spelt, and oat. You don't have to do that, but I just like playing around with the flours. It influences the texture and all that. But the banana is the sweetener. Banana is a wonderful sweetener. And that's what goes in there. And then, of course, the zucchini and vegan chocolate chips. So there are ways to satisfy that sweet tooth in a more healthy way. The thing is, you just can't get carried away, with it, which I can do. I have to watch that myself.
That's right. So use the fruit, the whole fruit, and nothing but the whole fruit.
There you go. There you go.
Wow. Well, I want to be a joyful vegan like you when I grow up.
Hey, it's not all bad. I tell you, I'm enjoying it. I love eating now more than I ever have. And I love to eat. I've always loved to eat. And I still love to eat. And I'm not missing anything.
But now you eat the food that loves you back.
And that's it.
Right. Elizabeth commenting on how the African-American community badly needs your book because of things like high blood pressure and diabetes.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And that's one of the main reasons, I was motivated to do it, to learn how to do it,
Well, we've been posting the link all throughout the show. So if you really mean that, get the book for all your friends.
Thank you very much.
It was so nice to meet you. Thank you so much. If you come back on again, maybe you can make that cornbread recipe. That sounds amazing.
I would be delighted to do that.
That would be so great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Chef AJ. Really appreciate it. I've had a lot of fun. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I can't stop looking at that piece of art behind you. It's spectacular.
Thank you. I'll tell my daughter.
It's really beautiful, just like you. Thank you so much. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. We have a bonus show today at 4 p.m. Pacific time, backed by popular demand, is Chef Vicki Gack-Brett with her new book, the Plant-Based for Life Cookbook. She is going to be making a ratatouille flatbread pizza, chimichurri corn on the cob, some kind of a mashed potato dish, and Moroccan strawberry almond milkshake. That sounds good, doesn't it?
It sounds wonderful.
But I can't stop thinking about your cornbread. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
All right.